Hey guys, how cool is this thing? It's called the Jeep Gladiator, and as you can probably tell, it is based on the Jeep Wrangler. In my opinion, it's probably one of the coolest dual cab utes you can get in Australia at the moment. Or if you're overseas, you might call this a pickup truck. There are only two versions available in Australia, apart from a launch edition, which I think only 100 were available, so they're probably all gone by now. But you can get the Overland, which has got sort of road-oriented tyres, and then the Rubicon. And anyone that knows their Jeeps will know the Rubicon badge is only applied to the most hardcore off-road models that Jeep offers. This example looks so cool. I love driving it, especially in this color. It's called Gator Green. I looked at the specs and it says it is metallic, but it looks flat to me. But anyway, it looks really, really cool. It looks like a toy army truck. Telltale signs for the Gladiator Rubicon edition include these massive chunky tow hooks that hang out of the back of the rear bumper bar there. There's some more at the front, which you've got to pull off these little caps, but they expose similar red hooks for the front there. And then probably the most obvious thing are these BF Goodrich 32-inch, I believe they're 32-inch off-road, or they're called mud terrain tyres. If you look a little closer, you'll see that there's a set of Fox shocks behind there, developed in partnership with Jeep, and there's Fox shocks on the back as well to give it a really rugged off-road capability. The only thing that does look a bit odd, in my opinion, is just the sheer length of the thing. So this has got an extra 480 millimeters in the wheelbase, and that's to accommodate or to provide a nice rear seat area for the passengers, but also to allow for a nice sizable tub or tray at the back. I think the main difference there is that big panel space there, whereas that's probably where the rear wheel would normally go in the four-door Wrangler. Apart from that though, I love the look of this thing. It turns a few heads on the road as well. As I've been driving around, people are double taking and thinking, what's that? Hang on, I know that's a Wrangler at the front, but why has it got a tray on the back? If you're in America, I don't know what the Wrangler's been like. You could probably always get it as a pickup truck. I don't know the answer to that. But in Australia, this is definitely something very, very new. In that sense, it is a very interesting alternative to the popular dual cab ute rivals in Australia. Vehicles such as the Toyota Hilux, Ford Ranger and Isuzu D-Max and so on. This competes in the same segment. Unlike any of those rivals though, this is a little bit different, especially the Rubicon, because this is very, very focused or heavily focused on off-road adventure. You can pop off the two roof panels, you can take the doors off and go for a drive. It's very different to it offers more than a normal Toyota Hilux or Ford Ranger or so on. Another point of difference from those rivals is that this has got coil springs at the back. So the ride is, I think it's more comfortable than the popular dual cab rivals that we have in Australia that all have sort of leaf springs. There's only a couple that have got coil springs at the back. So in that sense, yes, you could get the Overland version. It's not going to be as good off-road as the Rubicon, but you do get more comfort than the typical rival. So if you are looking for something that's, you know, perhaps might not be as heavy duty in terms of towing and payload capacity, the Overland could be a good alternative for you. For this test, I'm going to do a bit of a road trip. I'm meeting my friend up the coast. I'm here in Sydney, so we're going to go up the coast. He's got a massive property. I haven't actually been there, but he said we could do some four-wheel driving there, but we've also got some backup options, some tracks around the place, and then also some sand dunes. So we might go to the sand dunes. I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out, but I'll take you for a drive. We'll get on the highway and so on and check out how this thing goes. So let's jump inside. We'll check out the interior and then head off. I love the external door handles there, very macho and manly. And then also the thin doors. I don't know why, but the thin doors, I don't know, there's something about it that makes it really interesting. It reminds me of an old Land Rover Defender or something. So then when you jump inside, you can just see straight over that windowsill there. Even before we move off, this for me is a very entertaining interior. Like you can just sit in here and it feels, I don't know, animated and full of character before you even drive anywhere, which is really interesting. I also like the way that everything is rubber lined. So even these cup holders down here, it's got like a little rubber skin that goes over the top to make it a bit more sort of soft and grippy. Even the dash has got sort of a leatherette along the top there, and even the door trims. It's not quite, well, it's not leather, but you can sort of push your finger into it. It's not just scratchy plastics. Even the buttons have got like a little rubber lining just to, I don't know, just adds that extra little quality touch, I suppose. And on the passenger side, even that's got a rubber lining as well, so they could have easily just made that scratchy plastic and probably no one would care, but I like that they've gone to that extra detail. And then they've got these little hex bolts or Allen keys or whatever you want to call them, holding everything together. You sit very upright in the cabin, and you can see that big bulging bonnet there, but great visibility all around. You've got thin pillars. As I said, you can see straight over the door, and in fact, if you look through the side mirror, you can see the wheel arch popping out there, so you've got a bit of an idea of where the rear wheel sits. Net pockets in the side there for extra practicality, and then a big center console box, glove box as well. Yeah, everything that you could need in a modern dual cab pickup truck or ute. We'll have a look at the rear seats before we hit the road. You will have to excuse all my stuff in the back here, but basically you've got plenty of room for 3 across here, or 2 very comfortably. You've even got your own climate vents. Power window switches are down here like they are in the front. They're all down at on the dashboard there. And then massive cup holders for a big drink, and then more of that netted storage pockets in the sides. The Rubicon comes with a 9-speaker sound system, so you've got some pretty cool bass back there. The only problem, or minor problem, is this big roll bar does sort of get close to your head as you get in and out. It's very easy to bump your head on it, especially if you're, got a baby seat here and you're reaching around and so on. Your head, gets very, very close to that, and I've bumped it just a couple of times on there. I'm not sure what this woven sort of pattern is here. You can't really do anything with it. I suppose you could put a pen in there or something, but I don't know, probably just a design thing. Another net there, and then you've got these little discrete hooks so you can put your shopping there, and it just hangs down without moving around too much. But yeah, plenty of room. I've got heaps of leg room there. Even if I had the seat back a bit like that passenger seat, you've still got plenty of leg room, probably more than some of the popular dual cab utes in Australia at the moment. Big grab handle to hold on when you're forward driving, and this does flip down as well. I've just got my camera bag there, but anyway, that does flip down. It's got a couple of cup holders in it. We'll check out the tray. I like the way that sort of, it's not hydraulic, but it's just got a dampened effect as it drops down there. And as you can see, I'm a massive camping enthusiast. I don't even have my tent folded up properly. But anyway, you can fold this back pretty easily. It rolls back, you just pull one of these tabs. This test car features the optional Lifestyle Adventure package, which includes a durable spray-in bed liner and the roll-up tonneau cover. Out onto the highway now, and we get a bit of an idea of its grand touring capability. So I'm cruising along at 100 kilometers an hour. It's only requiring 2,000 RPM, which is not too bad. I have noticed if you start creeping up to sort of 110 or 120 kilometers an hour, the revs do jump up pretty quickly. But at 100, it cruises just fine. Obviously, or you might be able to hear the tyre roar of those big chunky tyres, but that's just the sort of the side effect of having a more grip off the road. I don't think it's too bad. Like, it doesn't intrude on the cabin quietness too much. You can still sort of have a conversation with someone, and you don't have to raise your voice all that much. Probably what intrudes on the quietness even more is just the boxy design. So there's a lot of wind noise around the pillars there, and even the massive, the chunky side mirrors, and the fact that the windscreen is almost vertical and flat. So the airflow doesn't really get to bounce around the car. It just smacks it straight on. And also, you probably can see there's all bugs all over the window. I've only picked up the car just the other day, but yet there's already bugs all over the car, all over the windscreen, I mean, because it is just flat and just picks up all the bugs. I'm very comfortable though. I like the driving position. The steering wheel's quite sporty and small. I like that it's got a pretty thin rim, and it feels quite nice to hold. Typical sort of sports 3-spoke layout. Yeah, it feels good. And with a short dash, it's very easy to see out of. You don't have a big long dashboard that you've got to sort of peer over. It's just pretty much straight away. It's like you're wearing the windscreen as glasses almost. This car does come with adaptive cruise control, which is pretty impressive for a hardcore off-roader. And interestingly, there are 2 buttons down here. By the way, when I'm driving along, I'm looking straight ahead with my eyes, even though I might tilt the camera, my head down a bit so you can see the buttons. But my eyes are actually focused on ahead, so I know where I'm driving, just so you know. But yeah, there's 2 buttons down here for the cruise control. one for normal cruise control, so you don't have to have adaptive if you don't want to. I sometimes don't. I prefer not to have it, particularly in sort of higher traffic areas like this, because people jump in front of you, then you get pushed back, and you just keep getting pushed all the way back by the automatic braking. So normal cruise control is probably better in that sort of scenario. But then you do have adaptive as well, and you can change the distance between you and the front of the car in front. There's about 5 different settings there to control your distance. You may have spotted the little Jeep icon there. That's like a little Easter egg, I suppose you'd call it. You can find the little Jeep symbols everywhere. There's another one on the top of the gear lever here. It's actually the pickup truck version. I think there's some on the rims as well, the wheels on the inner spokes. There's a little badge like that, little logo like that. Adds a bit of fun. One thing you'll probably notice when you first drive the Gladiator is the steering play on center. So there's just a little bit of movement there and nothing really happens. That's pretty typical of a hardcore 4x4. It just means when you're on highways like this where you've sort of got big sweeping bends, you've got to just compensate for that by sort of turning before you need to turn. And even then I'm making corrections and it's not really doing anything to the direction of the car. Some of that can be attributed to the big balloony tyres. So that's the whole purpose of low profile tyres, so you get better response from the steering. You make a turn, the wheel will turn as in the actual rim, and the tyre will follow straight after. Whereas when you've got big balloony tyres like this, the rim will turn, but then there's a bit of flex with the tyre as it catches up and makes the turn as well. But you get used to it pretty quickly. I actually drove this down a nice winding road, and I thought it was going to be, well, let's just say a memorable experience for me, but it was actually pretty good. It turns okay. There's definitely a bit of body roll when you first make a turn, but then after that it sort of just holds and stays there, and the steering feels actually quite nice. It's very mechanical. I'm sure it is. I don't actually know. I'll have to read the specs, but I'm sure it's a hydraulic mechanical based steering setup, because I can feel everything. Even when you run over the reflectors, you can sort of feel them, and you can even kind of feel the tyre flex as well. I'm not saying it's like a sports car style of steering, but it's just in its basicness, it's actually quite communicative, and you can feel what's going on. But yeah, the handling's not too bad. It hangs on, and as I said, there's a bit of sort of body roll and tip as you first point it in, but then it just holds there, and it feels quite nice. It doesn't feel uncomfortable in the bends, put it that way. I was expecting it to be, just not very pleasant, turning from left to right and so on, going down some nice, getting a bit of a rhythm going between some switchbacks. But it feels okay. I will try to find a nice road up ahead for you and give you a bit of a demonstration. But yeah, it's not as bad as you might think, put it that way. It's definitely a lot better than what you might think. You've got lots of functionality in here in terms of the technology and gadgets. I'll show you the instrument cluster here. There's a big digital screen. Again, keeping in mind, I'm looking straight ahead, but I'll try and point the camera down to toggle through them for you. So you've got this little arrow set up on the left here, and you can go through. You've got engine oil pressure and so on, off-road menus, the adaptive cruise control, oops, past one, fuel consumption, trip information, radio, whatever. And I think you can go left and right in some of them, and it will allow you to toggle through even more. But then there's even more in this touchscreen as well. I do like this, the Uconnect touchscreen, it's called Uconnect system that Fiat Chrysler offers with their cars. I like that there's just basic menu buttons across the bottom, so you can always just go to where you need. The only slightly confusing part is it's got a climate menu in here, but then you've got this panel down here which is for the climate as well, mostly. That's the kind of confusing part. It's not that bad, but for example, you've got the volume knob here integrated into the climate panel, and then this one in the middle there is for the fan speed. So yeah, it's just kind of a bit funny. You've got traction control and engine stop start as well, while the rest of it is to do with the climate control. Got Sydney afternoon, Friday afternoon traffic. Luckily we've got none in the direction that we're going, so that's quite convenient. I'll come back to the touchscreen when we're stopped, and I can do it a bit safer and go through some of the different things you can play around with. It's got these apps pages, and you've got off-road pages and all sorts of stuff. Even a camera that you can activate as you're driving, along with the front one, which is good because I don't know if you've noticed, but that front bumper bar really sticks out. And when you're driving along, particularly during parking, you can easily see the edge of the bonnet, but that bumper bar sticks out almost like a foot or 50 centimeters or something. So it can be difficult to tell when, how far you got to go, whereas you can use that camera, the forward-facing camera, to see how far you actually have to go. So here's where all the traffic is now. Actually, this might give us an opportunity to go through some of the apps here. But you've got off-road pages, and it does this little, I'll look forward ahead, but you just watch the screen. It does this little animated thing, may be lost, but never stuck. And a little Jeep going across there, it's pretty cool. But yeah, you've got auxiliary gauges or accessory gauges, oil pressure and all that sort of stuff. You can monitor your drivetrain, tells you your altitude and your exact coordinates on Earth, which is pretty interesting. And then your pitch and all that sort of thing when you're climbing over things. You can see what sort of angle you've got going. We're coming up to the Sydney Harbour Bridge now. There it is over there. I guess it's one of Australia's sort of main tourist attractions or landmarks, I suppose you'd call it. So even going around this corner here, like it leans in, there's a bit of roll, but then it just stays there. It's not too bad, considering the tyres and the suspension set up for off-road driving anyway. The Sydney Harbour Bridge opened in 1932 and was designed and built by a British company called Dorman Long. They used their own Tyne Bridge in Newcastle, UK, which opened 4 years earlier, as inspiration for the design. However, the Sydney Harbour Bridge is uniquely flared out at each end of the arch. It's currently the world's tallest steel arch bridge, measuring 134 metres from the water to the peak. I've just caught up with my mate Ben in front. He's got a fairly original old Land Cruiser. It's a petrol model, and he's put a exhaust on it. It actually sounds really, really meaty. We might be able to hear it as he takes off. But it looks like the sun is going to go down before we get there. It's 10 to 5, so I probably won't be able to show you the property today. But yeah, we'll go over it and have a bit of a look tonight or this afternoon, and then I'll get back to you tomorrow morning, and either we'll do some four-wheel driving on the property, or we'll go to a nearby track or the sand dunes and see how this beast handles the off-road stuff. So here we are, guys. We're at the campsite. It's looking pretty good. We went for a walk up the hill over there, and there's a bit of a four-wheel drive track. We've got some rally beaters over there, but yeah, we'll see how we go up the hill. It's pretty slippery today. It's all dewy and everything, but this thing's got chunky tyres, so we'll check it out.
Does it have a rear demister? Pretty sure it does somewhere. It's too much shit to look at. I'm coming from a Land Cruiser anyway, there's only a few buttons, I guess. What's auto?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure that out. So you've got 4H auto and then 4H part-time. I don't know what that means. The Gladiator features a part-time four-wheel drive system with two 4H settings. 4H Auto is for all surfaces, including normal roads, and can be left engaged, while 4H Part-Time essentially locks the centre diff and should only be engaged on slippery surfaces. So it doesn't look that bad. It is quite steep, but we've got it in four-wheel drive anyway, because it is quite slippery, but we'll see how it goes. As you can see, the tyres pick up all the mud, so there is a sort of disadvantage of boggy tyres that they collect all the mud. But as you can see, plenty of grip getting up here. Watch out for those sticks. Although the terrain doesn't look all that challenging on camera, this hill was actually very steep. Certainly too steep for me at the crack of dawn, but the Gladiator drove straight up with no hesitation whatsoever. Another friend, Nick, brought along his modified Mitsubishi Pajero Sport, which also had no issue. So it might not look it, but it's actually pretty steep, and I'm totally puffed out. It's at this point where I really could have done with a big Gatorade, but instead I received a mouthful of mud. Thanks, Ben. Bastard. To help with controlled downhill driving, the Gladiator comes standard with hill descent control, and the vehicle will automatically maintain it with complete control. One of the advantages of having access to private property is that you can have a bit of a play around. For this section we stuck it back into 2H rear-wheel drive mode. So we'll try out the hill descent control. There's two different speeds. There's actually a number of different speeds. Firstly, you need to be in low range, but then you simply use the gear selector in the manual position to bump up or down the set speed. It goes up to 8 kilometers an hour, and there's a little display on the dash to show you the current setting. This is the low speed, and it will automatically help you very slowly descent. It probably doesn't look that steep on camera, but it's actually really steep, and it's slippery. I've got to make sure I don't fall over actually. And then that's the faster speed, so it just goes a little bit faster. But yeah, it's early in the morning, lots of dew, so the grass is a little bit wet. As you can see, there's mud all over the car. Easy. Yeah, as you can see, that's pretty muddy there. Make sure I don't slip over. So we'll probably get going from here. It is a nice property, but it's not you know, serious enough off-roading for what we want to do. So we're going to head over to the sand dunes and check it out. But yeah, it's been a little bit of fun. Well, that wasn't really a challenge for the Gladiator, but it was a bit of fun anyway. I've noticed there aren't any sort of driving modes. So in the Grand Cherokee, you've got, you know, all these different modes you can select from, whereas this, it's just got your drive modes, like 4H, and it's got 4H auto and 4H part-time. But there's no sort of, yeah, sand mode or anything like that. So we'll see how it goes on the sand. One thing that is definitely worth noting is the comfort. It's quite a comfortable car, even off-road, because it does have coil springs all round. Still a live axle at the front and rear, but it's very comfortable compared with, you know, the run-of-the-mill, the common dual cab diesel 4x4s that are out there, which have leaf springs at the back, and they bounce around quite a bit when you don't have anything in the back. Whereas this, it doesn't really matter. Obviously the trade-off there might be the payload is a bit lower in this than the heavy-duty dual cab diesel 4x4s that are out there. One thing I did notice when we were doing some sort of looking around for some tracks off camera, I didn't come across anything that was worth filming, but there was this little hump, and this actually scrubbed out its belly a little bit, just on the chassis, just scraped over this little hump, whereas the Land Cruiser in front and the Pajero Sport behind me didn't scrub out. And I think that's got to do with this massive, or the long wheelbase of this car. It means it can't sort of clamber over things as well as a shorter wheelbase car. So that's something to keep in mind. If you are on a property that's got a lot of humps, if you got one of these, you'd probably need to raise it up even more, or yeah, you might be better off with one of the dual cab utes, or even a single cab 4x4. That would probably do a little bit better over that sort of scenario anyway. Okay, so here we are, guys, the Sand Dune Adventure entrance. I think we're just going to swap cars here. I don't think the Land Cruiser is going to come along, but yeah, let's go and check it out. I do have my microphone unplugged, so if the sound's a little bit different, I've just unplugged it and just relying on the GoPro mic, just because I'm going to be jumping in and out of the car, and the microphone gets caught on my my collar and everything, and then yeah, so I just unplugged it anyway. We've got the beach permit, so I'll put this on the window. It's $33, a bit of a rip-off really, but only for 3 days as well. Anyway. This engine's probably pretty well suited to the sand actually, because it likes to rev, and it's got plenty of power up in the high end of the rev range. It is going to mean that it's going to be revving quite a bit for most of the driving, but yeah, in America I've noticed that the Gladiator is available with a diesel engine, and I think I would choose the diesel over this V6 just because it is a bit rev happy. I mean, it's a nice V6, but it's just, I don't know, it doesn't seem that well suited to a 4x4. 347 Newton meters isn't all that much torque either. Anyway, we'll let the tyres down a little bit and yeah, hit the sand dunes. Okay, so we've got the tyres down to about 17 psi. We did have an actual gauge, a proper, whatever you call it, professional gauge that reliefs the valve and everything. But the onboard gauge here is saying 22 for the front and 15 for the back left for some reason. But anyway, the main thing is that the tyres are let down a bit so they can balloon out and we can get better traction on the sand. So for sand driving, I'll just leave it in 4H auto and see how it goes. It's always a good idea to turn the stability and traction control completely off because you don't want it to be braking and things. You need the wheels to keep turning on the sand. We'll put it into 4H auto. The little symbol on the dash says 4H, and the traction control has just come back on again, so I'll just turn that back off. And I usually put it in manual mode so it doesn't climb up the gears too much. I'm in second gear. Getting a little bit bogged down. I might try 4H part-time and see what that does in a minute. But yeah, it does have plenty of ground clearance, so it's not going to get you know, dragging along the sand. Some SUVs can go on the sand, but the bottom of it ends up collecting all these little mounds that form. And it sort of slows you down and gets you bogged down, whereas this has definitely got plenty of clearance that we can just drive straight over pretty much anything. Might be a good opportunity to wash some of the mud off the car, go through some of this water, even though it's probably not advised to go through the water. You don't know how deep it is, let alone the salt in the water. So we can shift down to first gear And yeah, this engine's got only 347 Newton meters, 209 kilowatts though, but you do need to rev it to achieve those figures. So first gear actually seems a bit better than the higher gears, because we can get the revs up. That's where the power is. Oops. You pull back to shift up, push forward to shift down. There aren't paddle shifters, I don't think. There's these little buttons on the back, and you can change on the left hand side, I think it's you change the track of the audio system, and on the right hand side you've got volume buttons. But there is a little button, I'll just push one. Yeah, that's just doing something else up here, changing the station by the looks of it, yeah. So yeah, there's no actual paddle shifters behind it, you've got to use the shifter. What's it do?
It just cuts out. It just doesn't have enough guts.
Cuts out?
Yeah, it just doesn't want to go.
Are you using manual mode?
Yeah. I'm first holding it to, I'm clicking the second, bringing it down to first.
Try it in part-time four-wheel drive. See if that makes any difference. Yeah. 4H part-time mode definitely provides better progress in really boggy, dry sand. It seems to rely less on the power distribution system and instead just apply full power to all four wheels. Due to conservation in the area, you aren't actually allowed to drive up onto most of the dunes here, so we couldn't fully test out the Jeep's capabilities. Even so, you get the sense this thing could go anywhere. It's so rugged and relentless, especially in 4H part-time. The 4H auto mode seemed fine on firmer ground and pulled through relatively deep water crossings with no issue. So there we have it, guys. I would have liked to have shown you a bit more of the sort of very serious off-road potential of this thing. There is another track that we were going to go to called Killingworth Loop, but the guys said that there's a lot of humps that you got to get over, and the long wheelbase of this would probably cause it to bottom out quite a bit, they said. So we didn't bother trying to attack those more serious tracks. On the beach, I think this V6 engine is definitely well suited, because you can keep the revs up, and that's what's good for sand driving, keeping those revs up. You can use the manual mode, leave it in second gear, and just use that power up in the higher end of the rev range. There isn't much torque from this engine. That's my probably main concern. The performance is fine. It does 0 to 100 in 8 or 9 seconds. We will do a normal 0 to 100 video for you like we usually do, but from memory it did about 8 or 9 seconds, which is pretty good. But yeah, I think for a car like this you need more torque. It's more beneficial to have more torque. That comes in handy more than outright top end power does. But yeah, overall I love this thing. Like I could drive this all day. I could drive this around Australia. It's just a lot of fun. There's a lot of theatre to it. There's a lot of sort of character to it. It's definitely not boring compared with the common dual cab diesel 4x4s that are out there at the moment. It does have a disc brake rear end. It's got coil springs at the rear end. It comes with these big BF Goodrich tyres as standard. Disconnect the front sway bar as well for even better off-road performance. And yeah, this huge touchscreen and everything. It's a very well packaged car. If you're in the market for a dual cab serious off-road car, this is definitely one that should be high on your wish list. It doesn't have the absolute heavy-duty nature of some of the diesel rivals with leaf springs at the back, but it makes up for that, or it compensates for that with other abilities, such as the on-road comfort is really nice. It's actually quite comfortable. There is a bit of juddering, as you usually get, especially with big balloony tyres over corrugations and so on, but it's totally fine for what it is. The main concerns for me are that the car is very long. So if you're in the city, this is going to be a bit of a pain to park, definitely. It's still pretty narrow, but very, very long. And that also has that issue of being able to clamber over mounds and sharp-edged ledges and so on, because it does bottom out on its belly. Aside from that though, and like if you wanted to do some mud driving and all that sort of thing, this thing just rips through anything, especially with those big tyres. Jeep offers a 5-year warranty as well, which is handy, and this is optioned with the lifestyle pack. I'll flash up on the screen exactly what that includes. I like the tub cover as well. That just rolls up very conveniently, and it's got Velcro straps to hold it down. Better than those hard covers that they offer in some dual cab utes, where you can't really put anything in it that's taller than the tub, because otherwise the hard cover doesn't close down properly. So it's definitely good for that type of thing. I'll go into more of the details in terms of the specs and so on, the capacities and the ground clearance and all that in the written review coming up soon. And we'll include our 0 to 100 video as well for you. In the meantime, thanks for watching.